Alright, so let's, I guess, get back to talking about D&D and stuff. I know I haven't talked about it for a little bit. I know my other videos don't do very well. So let's get back to this. And what I was going to talk about today is I kind of wanted to talk about my my 5th edition game that's been going on. It's one where I'm actually a player and I'm not a DM, which is kind of nice for me. Because being a DM, I'm kind of limited, I feel. Not like, how do I explain it? As a DM, I get to create as many characters as I want, and I get to put life into a world, but I don't really get to get invested in a character so much, because literally anything could take that character out. I could put this villain that I really enjoy and he can get killed instantly, or I could create this NPC that I don't want to be pushing the plot along too much. That's one of the things that I have an issue with, is I create someone and I want them to be driving the plot. So it's something that I have to keep myself from doing. I try to make my some of my NPCs really just kind of there. If it's an NPC that I solely put in to help the group along in some way, shape, or form. For instance, the last character I created was a bear whose sole purpose was to carry a piece of armor and get that to the group. The whole reason I put him in is to get that armor to them. I tried to start a fight and tried to get him killed. Group just wouldn't go along with it. So it's one of those things where I want to be in control, but at the same time I'm not quite as in control as I'd like to be. So that's why I like making a character. That's why I like playing. Is I'm not in full control, however, I'm in control of my character and what they do. And I have no reason to not be. I have no reason to limit myself on their actions. I have no reason to stop them from doing things. And that's almost liberating. Because I'm not controlling this character, keeping them from acting on in-game knowledge, sort of thing. So, we started playing 5th edition about I want to say like 4 months ago, something along those lines, 4 or 5 months. And part of the reason we haven't progressed very far is because of the way we do kind of a 2 and 2 thing. Because when right before we started this, I was working up on the slope in Alaska. That isn't a ski resort, that's the oil fields. So we would work 2 and 2, and because of that we were doing 2 on 2 off for our game nights. And that's kind of the way things run now. And when we started this game, I decided to play a female character just for the hell of it, just to see what would happen. And I created Aria Mersai. This character, for anyone who's heard of any of my games, that name is going to pop up a lot. Aria specifically, not Mersai. That one, the last name is specific to this game. But I have a tendency to use that name. I don't know why. I like that name. So it's popped up in my... Shit, I'm being attacked by my own stuff. Sorry about that. But it's just a name that I use a lot. So I created a female human fighter, kind of bland. And this is one of the issues I have with 5th edition, is I leveled up recently and it was the most boring thing ever. It was literally, yay, I get 2 attacks, and yay, I get 13 more HP. This is fun. It's one of my problems with 5th edition, is leveling up is no longer an experience. At least from my experience. But more of the game. So my character is a female human fighter. Nothing wrong with that. The one thing about the game is that our characters have absolutely no memory, which I'm kind of trying to play as. I'm trying to play that person who literally has no clue who they are or who they were. All they know is their name and a few set of skills that they have. Like, as a level 1 fighter, I don't need to know much. I know I have a sword, I have a spear. I take one of these and I smack it into an enemy every once in a while. That's my job. So with me is Gordon the Green, who is played by one of my other friends, Dakota. And he is this crotchety old man who he kind of didn't get the no background part. It's something that he still has trouble kind of wrapping his head fully around. But his character is kind of the snake oil salesman, is how he describes himself. He calls himself a hedge mage who, when the game started, he couldn't really do much magic. His big thing has recently been prestidigitation. I'm not going to be able to say that word. You probably know what I'm talking about. He basically can do minor spells, minor illusions, just this kind of pointless stuff that serves no purpose. But he does it. And that's something he does just kind of distract people to sell them. And he has a bad tendency to just kind of do whatever sounds good at the time. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The third person is Bert Reinholds, who is a gnomish bard. This is played by Chad, who is usually our DM. Don't hear the name Chad and laugh. He's not what you usually think when you hear that name. But as a bard, usually you think of like singers or musicians, but in general, bards can just be kind of any kind of performer, to a certain degree, of course. So he decided he was going to make a character who was an insult comic. And what this does is, as my character is the only female in the group at the moment, we are apparently adding another player who's a female and playing a female. So currently my character is literally the lightning rod for all of the jokes. Now, in general, I'm not the kind of person who will say sexual harassment is this huge epidemic of a thing. I do think most social justice warriors are fucking retards who are making shit up to be offended. My character is blatantly being sexually harassed at this point. Constant sexual jokes and all of that. Like that's basically what Bert Reinholds does. Is he is just constantly being offensive to everyone, and that's his gimmick, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand it's within the realms of the game. It's just kind of funny and slightly awkward at times, but I kind of just play it off, and my character and my reactions are kind of the same thing. Just so that's the kind of interaction that our characters have. And the way the game is kind of going along is my friend who's DMing it, he is trying to make it go along fast. So it's a fairly fast-paced game where we're leveling up quick and the enemies are getting tougher and tougher quick. And the general story is we have been met by 2 of the 3 gods in the world and given this mission to not necessarily eliminate, but stop the evil god. Stop the third god from doing evil things. And we've been given a special orb that we go find shrines and we collect energy from the shrines into the orb. And they give us special powers. Like the first one we found gave us nature, I think it was. It gave us a proficiency in nature. The other two, I don't quite know what they did off the top of my head. They did do something, I don't know what it is. But we've been playing through this game, and we started off in this forest. And admittedly, I don't remember much from the forest because I was drunk off my ass when we went through this section. And that is something that I deeply regret doing, and I deeply apologize to my friend for. That's a lesson in and of itself. Moderation, guys. Drinking in D&D don't go well together. Drinking in anything, you gotta have moderation. But specifically something like D&D, kind of limit yourself to a certain degree. But what happened in the forest is we went through and there was a dryad. And this dryad had been possessed by some dark evil spirit. And while I don't fully remember what happened, we eventually slew this dryad, this possessed dryad thing that was literally begging for death. And unfortunately, this set the entire forest ablaze. The first area we were in was this giant foresty area. Sorry, I got a little lightheaded there. So we went through this giant foresty area, and it's now on fire. Partially because of us, I don't remember the exact details. But the next thing that happens is we find our way almost literally into a rabbit hole, and this is how we escape the fire. And we find our way to this magic pond, and it's quickly revealed to us that plants that touch this pond or are somehow connected to it grow very rapidly. So there's like this wall of vines, and we tried digging a trench, maybe thinking the water's going to stop the wall of vines, but in fact it does the exact opposite. And so we look into the lake, and there's this little flower just sitting at the bottom of the pond. And this is going to start one of two really bad habits for Gordon the Green. Because I go down there, because my character is the only person with any athleticism. I had the best rolls to start off with, but I'm a fighter with a mage and a bard. So I have 18 strength, and I took proficiency in athletics. So I can swim down there, no problem. Take off my armor real quick, get a few jokes cracked at me because, oh, the fighter is tripping off her armor. Oh boy. So I swim down there, pick this flower, and it immediately solves the problem. The plants aren't growing rapidly, they aren't bigger than they need to be. And we carry on. And we walk into quite literally the next room, and there is a big angry plant. It sees that we have this small plant with us, and it is angry. It wants to attack us. And it's made very clear that this is what it's doing. It wants to hurt us because we are in possession of this plant. Now, the thing that Gordon starts to do is he starts to think that this plant is the solution to every single one of our problems. Because he takes this plant and he thinks, oh, I'm going to give it to the Trent and that'll solve the problem. It just wants the plant. That'll make it happy and calm down and not want to kill us. That's not the case. It wanted the plant, but it was still going to kill us for touching the plant to begin with. However, the moment that this thing has the plant in its hand, it grows massively. And I don't think we fully broken down what the plant does, but it makes plants grow. That's something we know for certain. Like, we went to a desert area later on, and we put it on a cactus, and the cactus has turned from the traditional ones you see into just this ripped cactus. It quickly turned into, you put the plant on a cactus and it turns from this regular thing into just Armstrong from it's on my other wall. Full Metal Alchemist, sorry. It just turns into Armstrong when you put this plant on it. So that was kind of the gag that has been going on. So we fight this treant, and it's a much harder fight than it needed to be. But we eventually make our way through it, and this is where we go up, we put the orb near the shrine. It's got this mirror, and it gives us the knowledge of nature. So I'm carrying this orb, I keep it on me, and we go to the next area, and the next area is a desert. I can't remember the exact means of how we got to this desert, but shortly after walking through for, I think it was a few days, where we're just surviving off of cactuses, I think Bert survived off of blood, and I survived because when we fought the treant, they had this fruit on it, these really juicy fruits that when you took a bite into it, it just gushed out more liquid than was supposed to be in the fruit. So we survived through the desert some way or another, and we eventually find this tribe. And it's it's like a sand surfing tribe. They've got these big sand ships, and they're flying through the desert. And what they do is they're hunting for this glass. And it's this really important special glass, and we quickly learned that this tribe is... Sorry, one moment. We learned that this tribe is moving around hunting this glass, and then they go trade it into town. So nothing too out of the ordinary, a little different, but we work our way in there because my character is amazingly athletic. I go help them out, and I help them find lots of glass, and it's going to be worth lots of money for them, but they can't really repay me right now. I've worked in a little way that they did repay me, because basically my character took the magic... what was it called? Magic Apprentice or something along those lines. Basically, it's a feat that when I hit level 4, I took a feat that gives me one spell and one cantrip. One level 1 spell and one cantrip. And I took it from the Druid tree because I really wanted Thornwhip. And this is because of how I want to play my character. So, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So we get into this little scheme that's brought up by the chieftain's son. You see, the chieftain's son wants to find out the history of his tribe. He's the scholarly kind of kid, but he's the kind of kid who, oh, I'm so smart, I know everything I need to, sort of thing. He learned really quick growing up, but then he just kind of plateaued. And so his father's really disappointed in him for that, and he really wants to find the tribe's history to sort of redeem himself for this. And the thing that... So we join him on this little quest. We ride out, and it's all secret. That's... The thing about it is it was all secretive, and his father wasn't supposed to know. So we go out, and we are attacked by this group of marauders. Two of them are riding these lizard things, and one of them is floating on the sand for a couple reasons. But when we get into this fight, what quickly happens is it's me and the sand marauder just going head to head, and neither of us can kill each other at first. because it turns out that the DM had given him a parry ability. Basically, as long as he had a weapon in his hand, he got an advantage against someone, an advantage to his defense against someone fighting him. I'm not sure where and which feat it is, or what rule it is, but that's what he had. And then he had these two lizard riders who were trying to take out the mage and the bard, but the kind of character that I was building is sort of this battle master. I believe that's actually the archetype I took. And my whole gimmick is moving people around the battlefield, keeping them where I want them to be, which won't happen truly until I hit level 7, but right now I'm kind of taking a mini form of that. At the time I was level 3, I hadn't quite gotten my spell, but I had Goading Strike, which allowed me to basically take the big pirate guy and take the lizard guy and lock them both on me, which worked out for the most part pretty well, because it got the wizard plenty of chances to throw in attacks. The bard was just healing me, and not counting the fact that I couldn't hit this guy to save my life without a crit, I did my job. Now, the other thing that Gordon the Green has a gimmick for is lighting me on fire. This is sort of an in-character and out-of-character thing. It's just become a gag at this point. That he is convinced that if he sets me on fire enough, I'm just going to become so inoculated to it that I won't feel it. It will not hurt me anymore. This is not true. This will never happen. But in character, he's going to keep believing this. And that's fine. I'll just find some way to deal with it. But he is just burning hands right behind me just so he can keep hitting the big boss guy. Even though there's ways around it. He could take a step left, he could take a step forward. He could find a way to do this, he just doesn't. Oh well. He'll just keep setting me on fire. But this is where part of that is the reason I ended up using almost the entire group's reserves of healing items. See, at this point, we have not been to a town. At this point in the story. We have not been to any towns. And we had 3 beans. We had 3 sensu beans, effectively. And we had 3 bottles of liquid, which turned out to be one of the most hardcore liquors in the world, probably inspired by my drunken ass. And they healed you completely. The downside was you were drunk off your ass by taking even a couple sips of this stuff, which didn't actually come into play because the only time I used it was to keep myself alive at the end of the fight. And my character effectively sobered up before anything happened. But this was a really tough fight where my character almost went down 3 times. And I used 2 of the sensu beans and my own drink to keep myself alive. One of the other sensu beans was used to keep probably the mage alive. But this was the point where we quickly realized we need someone else. This is why I took a healing spell, because I was uncomfortable with the bard being the resident healer. And the downside to it was the way he built his bard is he had healing word, which isn't a bad thing. The only downside to it is it's a level 1 spell that heals a d4 plus 2, I think it is. I'm not sure. I want to say it's a d4 plus 2. Because he didn't roll very well, and my fighter almost has as much as charisma as his bard. It's just the way it happened. So his only healing spell is Healing Word, which doesn't heal that much, and it's just not effective enough. So I took Cure Wounds, I think, because of this fight. And that's the majority of what's happened so far. That's the real big highlights. It doesn't seem like much, but in game, it was kind of a big deal. I guess the final thing I really want to say, talk about with this is, or for now, I might come back to this. Let me know. I do want to come back and touch on this story because so far it's interesting. It is, however, confirming to me that I do not like 5th edition. And I don't want to go too much on that. I have a whole entire video of that. But the thing about it is, leveling up is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be kind of the big deal about Dungeons and Dragons, or RPGs in general, is you want to role play. You want to create a character. Like, it's the role playing and the game. You do need both. I know I talk a lot about how people are missing the role playing, but you do need the game to go along with it. And when you just abstract everything out so much, where I leveled up and I don't actually get to choose anything, partially because the way we're playing and the way my DM is doing it is we just get max HP every time we level up. So I hit level 5 and I got nothing. Or it was literally, how much HP am I getting? And I get an extra attack. Great. When leveling up takes 5 minutes, it's not very fun. But the story is what I'm loving about this game. It's very interesting, and our characters are kind of going a bit weird. So, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, game on.